Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. If you're tuning in on YouTube, thank you for clicking on the video. Grand Blue vs. Rising has been out for a while now, came out in December. And from the beginning, there have been, kind of a clash in mentality depending on who you ask on the game. Some people really, really love it. Some people despise it with a burning passion. And a lot of people were confused about why the game is the way it is or why the community is the way it is. And so we have, posts like these from Giuna, who's saying he doesn't really understand why it's not more popular. The game has a ton going for it, has a lot of good to it, all the things that he noted here. There's even more good things on top of this that he didn't add to this post. But, if you look at all of these things, you might be thinking the same thing. Why isn't this game bigger, right? And so before we jump in, I just want to give a small introduction, right? You might be asking, like, why am I the person that is speaking on this, right? Hi, my name's Khalil. I run tournaments for this game in NA. I run a pretty dedicated Grand Blue tournament series called Paragon Line. And I've been doing that since December. It's actually the first game that we ran tournaments for in general. And since then we've added more games to the lineup, but Grand Blue is where it started, and it is the longest running game that we have so far. We're going on our 40th installment on Friday. And so even whenever I wasn't doing Grand Blue Rising, before that, I've worked with a ton of other games. I staff a bunch of majors and this and that. I just kind of understand how fighting game community works, and I've spent a lot of time dedicating myself to it. And Grand Blue is one of the communities that I've decided to, give my attention and give my care to, which is important because to me, a game has to be worth it, right? Like, not every game is worth putting my time into, in my opinion, right? And so this game is one of the games that I do actually think is worth my time. And that's why it's important for me to have talks like this. So just to give a little bit more background, right? I did not play vanilla, right? I didn't play vanilla at all. My first real experience with Grand Blue Versus before Rising came out was I was staffing this event, CEO 2021. I was running Dragon Ball at this event. And I remember there being a room with Grand Blue Versus in it. And I was there with my boy Soap, right? My friend Soap, who's a Floridian player. He's pretty strong at fighting games. And he was really into Grand Blue Versus. He was like, yo, this game's kind of gas. We all know that this game kind of came out and had disadvantages because of the time that it came out with COVID. It didn't have rollback, right? It was disadvantaged from the start. It was really hard for vanilla to get the attention that a lot of people believe it deserved, because it was a very, very solid game. And it was very obviously high skill and people were into it. And I remember stepping into the room that had Grand Blue Versus in it, and I was just really blown away by how into it people were. People were super, super fucking excited. The matches were really down to the wire. I was like, this is really good fighting games. I remember that sticking in my mind. This is a core memory for me. And I was like, man, at this point, it's in 2021. I'm devoting all my time and everything in my mind to Dragon Ball at this point, right? I'm doing cloud servers and this and that, because that game had a lot of issues too that I had to deal with, right? But in my mind, I was like, man, if I had time, I would really want to dedicate something to this game because it seems really cool. And I was right? And so fast forward to December 2023, Rising comes out, and I'm like, okay, this is the time. We're gonna go hard on this, right? I'm not gonna miss my opportunity again. It has rollback, it has this and that, it has ton of things going for it. There's no reason for me to not just go really, really hard, right? And so we find ourselves in current day where, again, I think the game is more than fine, honestly. I think it's pretty good game overall. Does it have issues? Yeah, of course. Every fighting game has issues, though. I really think this is the non-statement, right? People want to say things like, oh, well, it's because, 6XL is in the game, or because Nier was really broken on release. And I just think that's bullshit. I'm not going to hold anything back in this talk, right? I'm simply going to tell you what I truly believe. I think that's bullshit, right? I think every modern fighting game especially has some form of really, really fucked up stuff Like every single one, everyone. You can't name one that doesn't, right? And fighting games have always been, even throughout history, a game of pick your poison, right? Every single fighting game has bullshit, and it is about what brand of bullshit are you willing to tolerate. And in Grand Blue Rising's case, it's not even unique bullshit, right? The things that exist in Rising and people have so much vitriol against, like 6XL and guard cancel, those are like the two that people talk about the most. They exist in some capacity in other games as well, right? If we go to Street Fighter, we talk about Drive Rush, we talk about Heat and Tekken, we talk about, these things exist. These things exist in other games. It's not unique to this, right? It's not unique to this game. So I don't think it's a matter of, wow, the game is just bad and that's why people aren't playing. I think that's clearly not the case. That's very, very clearly not the case. So I think that's in bad faith for people that do actually say that. And we'll adjust that a little bit more later. But the main thing, right? The main thing that you need to take away from all of the things that I'm saying, that I'm going to say in this talk, is that this game is not dead, right? It's straight up not. People like to be super hyperbolic about fighting games, especially. They like to pull up Steam player base counts. They like to pull up, Twitch viewership counts. And they like to say, oh, no one wants to play it because there's no one to play with. And that's also bullshit, right? That's also bullshit, because at that point it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you're saying, oh, I'm not going to play it because I believe no one's playing it, then no one actually will play, and then it will become what you feared in the first place. There are very obviously people playing the game, right? And the entrant counts at Evo and the diverse tournament ecosystem, right? Like the NA has it really, really made. We have so many tournaments in a week that people overschedule, right? Like I run one of the biggest Grand Blue tournaments in NA, and even I'm scheduled over, and I'm not even mad about it. There's just not enough days and not enough time slots in the week to house all of the events that people want to run. That's a good problem to have, right? There are so many people that want to do things with this game that we can't all have unique slots. That's a good problem to have. That means people are enthusiastic about it, and they actually do want to have some part in it, right? They care, right? And so we get ourselves into this conversation where, people kind of have these polarizing opinions on the game for one reason or another. And a lot of this is getting kind of perpetuated without having like nuanced conversation, right? And this is kind of an issue with modern fighting games as a whole, at least around the conversations that we have about modern fighting games. A lot of discourse has turned into essentially just shit slinging on Twitter, right? There's a severe lack of nuance. People are not having like thought out conversations with each other, and they're not having conversations with the goal of a solution, right? A lot of people will say, oh, well, I have this problem with the game or this problem with the community, but no one offers up any solutions of how do we fix this, right? How do we fix the problem? And so throughout this, whenever I give my points, I'm also going to do that. I'm also going to offer potential solutions of how do we fix this, right? Because talking about problems without talking about solutions or potential solutions kind of gets us nowhere. We just spin our wheels. We stay in the same place. We want to move forward. And I think everyone agrees that this game can be bigger, and it's not too late, right? Some people will say, oh, this or that. It's 9 months old. The game's ancient history. Like, why are we even talking about this anymore? No, it's never too late. Games can always have resurgences. But I do think it requires the correct mentality, and for us to have the correct mentality, like the culture has to change. It has to change in a pretty significant way, right? Okay, so why isn't Grand Blue as big as it could be? One thing to really, 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 really hold in your minds, right? Grand Blue IP. Let's talk about this, right? Grand Blue IP is actually pretty big. It's pretty significant, right? At least when we talk about the gacha game. The gacha game is very popular, but I believe even that runs into some issues, right? Because I don't believe that the gacha has a release in the States. I think you have to do like some emulation of the Japanese stores or something like that, right? It doesn't have an NA release, right? And so the IP is big, and there are players that are interested in the IP, but that might not translate that well to the West for those reasons. It doesn't have an NA release. And so like the only people that are playing it NA are the people that are willing to jump through the hoops, right? To play it through those methods. And that's a pretty small amount of people in the grand scheme of things, right? Like most people, if they're going to be inconvenienced in any type of extent, they're just going to be like, well, I'm just going to play something else. I'm not going to bother because I don't want to have to go through all this. Even if they really would like the game, right? They don't want to take the time to do that when they could be spending their time doing something else. I can't even blame them, right? That's not even their fault. It just is what it is, right? Like we're just going to talk about facts here. And so like, I think the problem ends up being is that even though the IP is bigger than we might think, it's subject to like some issues that lead it to not have as much as guaranteed success as some other anime fighting games that have come out in recent history, right? Like people are treating this like a Guilty Gear Strive and they're treating it like a Dragon Ball FighterZ. And this is just not realistic, right? Especially in the case of Dragon Ball FighterZ, right? Dragon Ball FighterZ is a game that is based on an IP that is extremely popular all over the world, including NA. Like it's just massive, right? Everyone knows about fucking Dragon Ball. Like it's everyone knows about fucking Dragon Ball, and it gets distributed everywhere. Like no matter what game, what style, that shit is available on your fucking toaster if they're able to. It's just how it goes, right? Everyone knows about Goku. Guilty Gear is a little different, right? Guilty Gear was not that popular at first, right? It wasn't that popular, but Strive has become a very, very important pillar in modern fighting games. I would argue even fighting game history, right? Being the first bigger game to like really push the idea of Japanese made games having rollback, right? And so for that reason alone, and the time that it came out, a lot of people gave Strive a try, right? And that is, or they're still experiencing like larger community and larger draw and all that as a result of people giving it a shot, right? Most of the time, having people try the game is the biggest problem, right? Because like I said, like fighting games in general, pretty bad retention problems, like all of them, like even the bigger games, there's a big like turnover rate with fighting games. Like people pick up the game and they're like, damn, I don't want to play a fighting game because I don't like what's associated with it. I don't like taking responsibility for my actions. It's too hard to learn. I can't do inputs. There's an infinite amount of excuses people make, or infinite amount of reasons someone might have for putting down a particular fighting game, right? These things just happen. And so you comparing it to these other games is like not really fair. And I actually think that that's a big point of like why conversation is so unhealthy in fighting games in general, is because all of it boils down to like this weird tribalism where people, instead of treating it like one singular community of people that like to play fighting games, we're treating it as a competition where, you know, I'm playing this game and you're playing that game, so that means you're a dog shit person and don't deserve to live. And yes, that's hyperbolic, but like that's really how people think. They think you can only play one fighting game, and whatever fighting game you choose defines you, right? It defines you as a person, and it determines your worth. Your opinion only matters if you play this and this game. Oh, you play that game, I don't want to hear from you, right? You can see conversations like this happen all the time in fighting games, and this game suffers from that a lot, right? Because of the peers that it's being compared to, right? I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to this game. I don't think this is fair to any fighting game for that matter. It's a very unhealthy way to have our conversation, right? Okay, but let's talk about actual things that like what holds it back, right? So we talk about the IP situation. It's something worth noting, right? Absolutely. But that really bleeds into the next point where the marketing is ambiguous, right? The marketing, and this is something that isn't our fault necessarily, right? This is something that we can help remedy, but the origins of it is not really up to us, right? That would be up to the developer and the publisher, right? Cygames, Arxis, how they choose to market the game is up to them. How much they decide to spend, how much effort they decide to put it in. And in some ways they've done a good job, and in other ways they've done a bad job. Let's talk about that. Things that they've done well. I do like that, like on social, they like to talk about, you know, they put out patch changes and they talk about this or that. They're like constantly putting out clips of certain things, and like kind of just showcasing things that for even people that don't play the game, it might bleed onto their timeline, and they'd be like, oh wow, that looks really, really cool, I'll give the game a shot, something like that, right? And that happens. That is not insignificant. Some people think that that's like, you know, frivolous, they shouldn't be spending time on it. No, but it does matter. It does actually matter quite a lot, because there's a lot of people that pick up certain fighting games as passerbys, right? They don't really know much about the game, they've never played the game, and if it wasn't for things like this, they would never even look at the game. They wouldn't even, it never even crossed their mind. They haven't been in a situation to even, you know, watch the game before. Because that's just not the way that like viewership culture works, unless you're going to like an offline and you see a stage that has the game up on the big stage, you're like, you know, I'm gonna check that out. And that happens a lot at offlines too, right? But how do you get people that are online to do that? That's really, really hard. It's really hard to do, right? And so that passerby interest matters in a big way. So I do like that they're doing that. But things that I think are not marketed as well. If I were on the marketing team for Rising, bro, I would have a post every fucking like few days about how there's a free version, right? Like every few days I was like, guys, there's a free version. Guys, there's a free version. Guys, there's a free version. This is like something unique to this game that like offers it an advantage that a lot, like pretty much, I don't think any other fighting game really has this. At the moment, at least not in this specific capacity. We could talk about like games that are mainly played on emulation, and this and that. Like, yeah, you don't have to pay for those games, but like this is unique in that it's a modern fighting game that has a retail version. It's $50, I believe, is the base price, and it has a free version that has damn near all the same capacities of the damn near all the same capacity as the actual version. You just get less characters, right? And you can't make rooms, or you can't participate in room matches, right? But those are like, right? That's like a big deal. That's like a really, really, really big deal. That is a massive boon, right? But I think the marketing team isn't doing a good enough job to like harp on that, right? And fortunately, right? Fortunately, this is something that we actually can help out with. Right. There's a lot of parts of marketing that we cannot really have a part in, not to the capacity that we'd like to, but telling people about the free version is something that we can do. Now we're limited, right? We're limited by our viewership and we're limited by our fan bases, but we could also be telling people, yo, remember this free version. You can play this. And some people do this already, right? I want to give a shout out to Zero, the commentator. You guys probably heard him on the mic for this game in some capacity, right? I have him on a lot. He talks about the free version all the time. Like pretty much every time he's on commentary, he talks about how if you're enjoying what you're liking, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, you can pick up the free version. That matters a shit ton, right? I think we should all be doing this. If you're not already doing this, you should be, because it's something that doesn't take much effort, and you would be surprised how many people switch up. Right? At first they're like, yeah, I'm not really that interested in the game. But then you tell them it's free and they're like, wait a second. Suddenly there might be interest that there never was before, right? You turn over a lot of people that way. And that is one of the benefits to even like bigger esports. We want to talk about like even non-fighting games, right? We can talk about your Fortnites and your Counter-Strikes and your League of Legends, right? One of the biggest things that those games have going for them is that they're free. If you want to play, you can just play, right? Even if your game costs 1 penny, right? You will lose a lot of people, right? Even though it's like a negligible cost, 1 penny would literally be like, come on, everyone could find 1 penny, right? If it was 1 penny, right, you're gonna lose X amount of people, like, and it's gonna be a large amount of people, that because now you've taken it from something that costs to something that does not cost, right? And so that's an advantage that this game has that we're not taking as much advantage as we could be, right? We should be harping on this, right? We should be bringing this up like pretty much every single conversation that we have the opportunity to when we're speaking on the game. Anytime we're doing some type of event or something like that where we're going to be reaching more people than just play the game, because everyone tunes into tournaments, right? It's not just people that play the game that watch fighting game tournaments. It's people that never play. They just like to watch. Part of that reason that some people only choose to watch is because they don't want to pay for a game that they don't even know that if they're going to like or not, right? If you can try it for free, then you get that opportunity, right? And you could change some of those people that were just bystanders to people that are active in your communities. Big deal, right? But the marketing team needs to harp on this, right? The marketing team needs to go harder on this. Like, this is something that offers you a unique advantage to the entire fighting game ecosystem, right? And you are not doing enough. You're not doing enough. Yeah, you put out the thing with the free character rotation, every week when the characters change, but it's not enough, right? On top of that, great marketing moves. You should hire me. You should hire me for your marketing team. I'm giving you banger ideas here. Like, this is also, they should go further, right? The free character rotation thing is great, but it is subject to some very, very, very pronounced limitations. For example, if a DLC character places high in a tournament, right, they don't make them free. I think that's a mistake. Honestly, I think that's a mistake. I think what Grand Blue Rising should do, on top of like harping on the free-to-play version, I think they should have sometimes, like, it could be like once a month, maybe once a month would be, they should do like free DLC weekends, right? They should do free DLC weekends. And I know this is possible. I know for a fact that it's possible because ArcSys has done this with games in the past, right? This has already happened. This is not a what if, right? They could actually just do this. They could just make DLC free for a weekend, right? And that's also a big deal. That's also a big deal. There's a ton of people that play the game right now that don't have DLC because they don't want to pay for it, right? And you can't try characters in fighting games unless you purchase them, right? That's a big deal. We can't even training mode, right? We can't training mode with characters unless we own them. Characters that you might log on and fight back to back to back to back in certain cases. I'm sure a lot of you probably run into a lot of fucking Beatrix on ladder. If you don't buy her, you can't lab against her, right? That's a mistake. That's a mistake. And if we're talking about marketing to people that aren't like super into the game yet, right? What if a DLC character makes them interested? What if they weren't interested in the game before, but then they see Lucilius and they're like, oh shit, that looks really fucking cool, right? That looks really, really fucking cool. I wonder if there's a way that I could try him. No, you have to pay for the game and then you have to pay for DLC on top, right? Things like this are why free DLC weekends would be a really, really big deal, because now not only the people that can't afford DLC, they can give them a try and even might be able to lab against them in certain capacities. Even the people that are outside of the game that are not playing yet they get the opportunity to play the reason that they were interested in the game, right? Without having to pay game plus DLC costs, right? That would convert a lot of people. You know how many people I've heard talk about Lucilius is the one that gets talked about a shit ton. Like, a lot of people talk about Lucilius. They see his animations, they see the way he's designed. They're like, oh shit, bro, he looks cool as fuck, bro. If I were to ever be interested in this game, I'd want to play that guy. Well, it's like, well, hand up, but pay up, because that's the only way you'll ever have an opportunity to, right? It's the only way you'll have an opportunity to. That's a mistake, I think. That's a mistake. And it's a shame, because I think like post-release monetization for the game has actually been like pretty solid. Like, people will naturally have an aversion to, games with battle passes and things like that. But I honestly think the way that they've done their battle passes and whatnot is pretty healthy, all things considered. It's pretty cheap and you actually get like tangible rewards, right? You can unlock some really cool costumes for characters for pretty low price, all things considered, as long as you play the game. And it doesn't take that much playing to unlock either, right? So I feel like this is a missed opportunity for them. And yeah, you could say like, yeah, you can like buy certain things with rupees in game and whatnot, but like it takes an extremely long time. I don't know how many people have actually like bought any of the like bigger skins or characters with rupees, but it takes a long fucking time, bro. It takes a long time. And so it's not really feasible for people to take that route. And so I think this would be beneficial for them to do like some type of free DLC implementation. And it doesn't have to be constant. It could be one of the two things. Like once a month, do a free DLC weekend, or just let people play characters in training mode, right? And I'm sure they don't want to do the training mode thing because they're probably thinking of some crazy scenario of what if people start running tournaments and events in training mode to dodge buying DLC. It's like, listen, bro. It's like, listen, bro, even if that is like a legitimate worry for you, like if that is something that you're actually worried about, then you're worrying about the wrong thing, right? You're at that point, you're worried about people playing the game that you want them to play, right? that's what you're worried about, right? People being on the game and playing it is just generally a positive. If you're getting more people to do so, right, then you're going to see the benefit of that in the long run. That's what marketing is. Marketing is paying something to get a return sometimes in the long run, right? That's just what it is. That's what it is. And you will market much better if you do things this way, in my opinion, right? Anyone that is listening to this or participating in this conversation is free to disagree with me, but I think it would be an overall good in the long run. Okay, before I continue, let me adjust some things in chat because you guys are a part of this conversation too, and I don't want to ignore you all. Muffin says, also, hi Muffin, congratulations on this weekend. I think every game needs some type of nonsense to be good right now. Otherwise, it'll be considered boring like vanilla was. That's actually true. That's actually a good take. Yeah, the trend of fighting games has gotten faster and faster, and so it's like kind of power creep for people's attention. Like if you don't have something that's flashy or like very, very impactful going on at like seemingly all times, there are people that get bored, right? Because a lot of the games that are the most popular right now, they are that way, right? And they will, like I said, they will always be compared to. No matter what we do, they will always be compared to. Naga says, I hate to say this, but Rising will always be the ad for the gacha game. Look at the state of Relink. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, that might be the case, but that doesn't matter, right? Like fighting games are what we make of them, right? That might be their intent for it to just be an ad for the gacha game, but it is up to us as the community to take that and run with it, right? It doesn't matter what their intent is. It's about what we choose to do with it, right? Honestly, in most cases, there's more things that they could be doing from their end that they probably won't commit to for this reason or another. But Cygames has the money. It's not a money issue. We all know that. I hope none of you think that this is a money problem. It's not. It's not a money problem, right? It's a matter of, do they want to devote the resources to their smallest game, quote unquote, right? I think it straight up is, because it's the most niche of all of them, right? But it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Despite that being the case, it still is performing pretty well at offlines. People are still playing the game, this and that. Like, I don't think that matters. But yeah, no, I mean, you're right, but I just don't think in the grand scheme of things that matters that much. Vanilla was free on PlayStation Plus some month last year. That really helped too. Yeah, no, absolutely. It does. It does. But moving on to the next issue, right? And this is a doozy, right? And this is gonna hit home for some people. This is gonna hit home for some people. Content gap, right? Big content gap. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. People do not make content for this game, right? And I know this because I'm a content creator, and if you are a content creator and you want to be successful being a content creator, you have to watch other people's content, right? You have to see what those around you are doing. And in some cases, you take inspiration from them and you change up some things and you attack things from different angles. That is the way to innovate as a content creator. My time creating content for Granblue, I've done a lot of research on like what people are doing and this and that. And there's just massive gaps. Like, people aren't really making content. Like, honestly, it's not really creating content for the game. Let me pull up something to illustrate a point, right? So if you go to YouTube, and this is on incognito mode, so it doesn't have my algorithm involved, right? And you type in GBVSR, right? What comes up, right? Granblue Fantasy versus high level replays is the top recommendation. Then we have a trailer. Then we have ranked match. We have TNS. Shout out to TNS, right? Ranked match. This might be story mode. This guy might be doing story mode. Ranked match. The first piece of like original like non-tournament content that we get to is from a Blaze guy talking about reversals in Grand Blue Rising make no sense. Which shout out to a Blaze guy. A Blaze guy, it goes by Autonomous. This is Autonomous, the Avatar Belial player. Some of you guys might have seen them in tournaments before. This is their video, right, about reversals. This is good. This is the type of stuff that I wish people did more. But if you go and you search the tag on YouTube, it's overpopulated by ranked match, ranked match, ranked match, ranked match. And that's what people are watching. That's it. Like, and in some ways it's because the viewers are really, really easily swayed by people playing ranked, which I think is a whole different topic of discussion. But I think in some ways there just isn't a lot else for them to watch, right? There's not a ton of non-ranked match / tournament gameplay or content for people to watch outside of that. An overwhelming majority of it is just replays, right? It is just replays, and then sometimes you have tournaments. Other than that, it's like, what are you watching, right? I have to scroll pretty far, and most people are not scrolling this far on YouTube, by the way, when you search. I would like to point that out, all right? I would like to make that point. Most people, when you scroll on YouTube, are not scrolling this far, right? They're not even doing this. They won't even see Autonomous's video because they type GBVSR, they're looking to click something here without scrolling. You might say, oh, it's not that much effort to scroll. People don't do it. It doesn't matter if it's not that much effort. They do not do it. They're clicking things here. This is what they're clicking, right? They're not scrolling. So they're not going to see Autonomous's video. They're not going to see Mangaka's guide on 1.5 system mechanic changes. This is good content, right? This is good content, but you can only do it, like even in Mangaka's case, I think it's a good video and a good series that he did, but he can only do it after updates, right? And we don't have updates that often in fighting games. So you only get this once in a while, and then you wait a few months, and then you get it again. What are you doing in between, right? And this is not to harp on him or anyone else, but we as a whole, this game, like people do not make content for it. They just straight up don't. And that's a mistake, I think. And I think that's a big mistake because people watch YouTube all around the world, right? Like all around the world. If you're making interesting content to put on YouTube, because we'll talk about live content in a different conversation, but if you're creating content for YouTube and it's good content, right? You could absolutely pop off doing Grand Blue content, Grand Blue Rising content. I promise you. Here's the key, right? You need to make interesting content, right? And then caption it. You need to do captions that have translations, right? That's really the key here, right? This is a cheat code. I'm not saying this is the only way to succeed, but I do think it's a viable path, right? You make interesting content, caption it for Japanese watchers and SEA watchers, right? Because they're the people that are playing the source material. They're playing Grand Blue Fantasy, right? And that shit will creep onto their algorithm if they can actually watch it, right? If they click the video and they can't understand it, how many people are gonna stick around, right? How many of you click on videos that are in a different language that you don't understand and you watch the whole video? Probably none of you, right? It's hard to understand, right? But if you take that extra step, right? First, creating good content. Second, trying to reach the audiences where we can convert people, right? Because that's what we have to do in fighting games that are based on something, right? Our biggest draw is going to be if we can leverage people from the gacha game. If we find a way to access that player base of people that are already interested in these characters, they're already interested in the lore and all that. If we're able to find a way to get those people into Grand Blue Fantasy Rising, right? That's huge. Things will blow up. They absolutely would, right? And we could keep them on the rotation. And that is access to a whole ton of new people that we never had before that are right next door. They're really a lot closer to us than we think that they are. Language barriers and everything aside. But even aside from that, I think even for the overwhelmingly like English speaking viewer base, like there just isn't a ton to watch. Like most of the content that you will see people make is just based on balance things, right? That's most of it. And there's so many more interesting things that you could do. You could literally do anything, right? Depending on how far you're willing to go. And I'm laughing because I'm thinking of, I like I said, I came from Dragon Ball. I came from Dragon Ball Fighters, and they had content creators that were doing completely out of pocket shit all the time. Like even Sparking Zero, there was a dude that made a fucking video of like every character in Sparking Zero looking like they're getting back shots from Cell or some shit, right? Now that's not good content, but it draws, right? It does draw. It does still circulate, right? I'm not joking, by the way. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. They have the Fall Guys mode. There's stuff in there. Yeah, but I don't know if Grand Brews is updated like that. Like that's why I actually have this. I have this tab too, where I was like, okay, what if you're a casual, right? What if you're a pure casual? You don't really care about fighting games that much. What if you are into Grand Brews, right? I type in Grand Brews, the first video, the most popular videos from 9 months ago, a year ago, 9 months ago, 10 months ago, 10 months ago, 9 months ago. Like no one's making content, right? No one's making content on like anything with this game. And I don't really get why. Like I'm not, I don't think that there's like any good reason that this is the case. Mostly I think people are lazy. Honestly, I think people are lazy. And then there's also one more point that I'll touch on later. But I think even the people that have like high standing in the community, if we talk about like, top players and influencers and this and that, like people are just they're not creating content. They're not getting people engaged. The only way to get people engaged, or the only way that they've been taking to get people engaged, is by doing Road to Master. Like that's an overwhelming majority of like what draws live content on Twitch. Like let's do an experiment, right? Like I'll even show you, and this is live, so yeah. Maybe I'll eat my words here, but let's take a look, right? Let's take a look at how things shape out on this end. So I'm gonna go to Twitch, right? Okay, let's go to categories. We're gonna go to Grand Blue. It has 67 viewers, right? Who's making content for the game right now? We have all these people, right? What are they doing? Right? What are they doing? Just matches. I believe this is someone in the lobby, right? Matches. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a fighting game. And like, yeah, people do want to see matches, but I think there's fatigue that becomes associated with this, right? There's fatigue. You can only watch someone grind ranked for so long. in any given session. How are you keeping people interested? How are you keeping people engaged and involved in the community that you want them to be a part of, right? There just isn't much. There's only 5 people live, or 6 people live, sorry. There's only 6 people live on this game right now, right? And I'm one of them. I'm at top of category right now, right? No one's doing anything else right now. And this illustrates a problem, right? Because like content is also a part of that marketing thing that we were talking about, the big bad M word, right? We were talking about, how do we get more people involved and interested in the game? Well, I can tell you that creating evergreen content that exists on YouTube, right? That is accessible by search, that people can stumble across even weeks and months and years later. That is how you get people more and more interested into a game. Content's very important to the landscape nowadays. And not every game has this problem, right? You want to talk about what separates Grand Blue from some of the games that are maybe more popular right now? This is a big deal, right? Street Fighter does not have this problem. Tekken does not have this problem, right? I would argue even Strive doesn't exactly have this problem. People make content for Strive, but the biggest thing about Strive is that they have a huge social media presence, right? That's a big deal. Strive is like the most popping game on social media, period. Like it's by far. Like if you see the amount of impressions and engagements that Strive content or Strive discourse or Strive anything, fan art, whatever, the circulation that it gets on Twitter is like massive compared to other games. It's like ridiculous. It's insane, right? And so they have the content there. It's just in a different medium than some others, right? But even Twitter content is still searchable, right? It's easily shared, right? People can easily retweet things or like things. They can bookmark them, this and that, right? It becomes a lot easier to see why these games are able to stay as big as they are for longer periods of time, right? The content matters in a big way. And I don't know what it is, but even some of the people that I know in this community that can make fantastic content, a lot of the time they choose not to, right? And some of that might be lack of inspiration. Some of that might be like kind of content dooming, right? Like there's dooming in content too. If you've ever been involved in content in any type of way, right? There's always the grand dilemma in your mind where it's like, why am I putting all this effort into this thing when what seems to get attention is the lower effort things, right? This is a big reoccurring thought, right, with content creators. And as time goes on, you see more and more people lean into lower effort content because it's just what gets traction and what gets clicks. You want an example? Let me illustrate an example, right? Tier lists, right? Tier lists are content. If you go live and you have, I'm making a tier list in your title, or you have tier list of some kind in your title, you will get more attention than you usually do. An overwhelming majority of the time. And this goes for any fighting game, right? Right? If you put tier list in your title and you're making a tier list, it doesn't even matter what the tier list is, right? That is, people get drawn to that shit. It's low effort. It's not hard to just make a tier list on anything, right? But it is what people click on, right? And that's why I'm saying it's not a problem. It's not necessarily only a problem with content creators. It's also a problem with content viewers, right? Content viewers in fighting games are conditioned to like the low effort shit. You guys are conditioned to like tier lists. You're conditioned to like replay rippers and uploaders, right? Those things get a lot of traction and a lot of views. And so the people that actually want to make good content, right, that have the potential to do that, they're looking at that and they're like, wow, like, why am I spending all this time doing all this editing and doing this and doing that when I could just do what these guys are doing, right? I can just do what these guys are doing. It takes 5 seconds. I don't have to do any prep. I don't have to do anything. And it gets more views, which means more ad revenue, which means more pretty much everything, right? Dilemma of content. This happens. This is something that pretty much every sizable content creator has thought about at some point, right? Now, the right thing to do in that situation is to recognize that part of making content is not necessarily the draw, right? It's nice to have that, right? If you can make good money and get good traction doing whatever, then that's great. But a lot of creating content is putting out something you believe is valuable, right? Creating something valuable and creating something that you think is beneficial to people, right? And so you should do it anyway. You should do it anyway. That crazy ass idea that no one else has ever done before and you're not really sure if people are going to like it or not, you should do it anyway, right? And this, again, this is not a rising only issue, but it does matter for this game because it's not going to be, it doesn't have some of the other carries that some other games do, right? Street Fighter is going to be big no matter what. Like we need to understand that, right? We're not comparing. We're not supposed to be comparing, right? These are two completely different realms. They are guaranteed success for a multitude of reasons, right? They've been around for fucking decades. Like we're the new kid on the block, all things considered, right? Even if we're talking about vanilla, like vanilla is not that old, guys. Like it's vanilla is still pretty recent, all things considered. And so like our dynamic of how we approach things and people's reception to those things is just going to naturally be different. It will be different. And we should not compare ourselves to these other games. We might have to do other things, right? We might have to take other steps, other avenues. We might have to think outside of the box. But I do think that this is a big deal, right? There's not enough people doing things that are interesting involving the game that aren't, hey guys, I'm just going to get this character to master, right? Like, really think about it. right? And like some of it's automatic, right? This point that Naga brings up, related to the content in the game. Every time a character gets released, there's new content, but there's none in its game in its sleep state, right? But that's the important thing about content, right? Content centered around new characters and new patches and all that, that's automatic. That's the easy part, right? To me, that's like, to a content creator, that's like your break time, right? That's when you don't have to do any idea generation. You don't have to do anything, right? You should put out those things about the new character, about the new patch, right? That stuff comes naturally. You just get that every few months. But what happens in between? How are you keeping people interested in that 2-month span between patches? Now that the new character is not, the new character hype is worn off. How are you keeping people around, right? That's what people should be thinking about. That's absolutely what they should be thinking about. Because when the new character drops and the new patch drops, all that stuff is automatic. Like, yeah, there will automatically be content. And you'll see whenever a patch drops and stuff like that, you'll see more people on the game too. Like if you go to the Twitch category, you'll see more people playing, right? You'll see more people populating that, right? Because it's automatic. It doesn't, that's the lowest effort it should be, right? That's the lowest effort it should be, is whenever something new drops for the game, because no one knows what's going on and you can just create based on that. But we should be focusing on what happens in between, and that's where this game suffers. That's something that this game is suffering with, because we don't have, we're not, since we're not the biggest game, right? It's not automatic for like corporations, for companies, for partners. Like this game's not going to get a Sajam Slam, I don't think, right? Sajam, I would love for you to prove me wrong, right? But it's just not likely, right? Something like that would help a lot. Something like that would help a lot, absolutely. But I think it's foolish for us to expect for this game to get that treatment, right? And so when we don't have the biggest entities in fighting games, like constantly bringing attention to the game, we have to do it ourselves. We have to. Like we have to. There's no way around this, right? No one is going to save us, right? I'm not even saying we necessarily need saving, but I think people need to consider, like, just do something. I shouldn't have to tell people this, right? In a perfect world, like people would already be gung-ho and they would be enthusiastic about it and they would be thinking about new ways to approach this problem. But like, that's not the case right now, right? And that brings me to my next point. Like this is bridging a gap to another one of these reasons, right? The curse of choice, right? People want to bring up this idea of, there's so many fighting games nowadays, and they're right. There's a lot of different games, and I think that people kind of they weigh themselves with the illusion that they have to make a choice, right? I think this is something that has plagued fighting games for years now, but it has only gotten worse as time has gone on, right? Now in the modern era, this sort of golden age that we're in, we have tons and tons of different fighting games, of different styles, of different IPs. And so like we live in an age where pretty much every game has good netcode, right? So that is not like defining like whether you play a game or not. Like pretty much every game has good netcode at this point. So you can really play like just about anything you want. Even some of the older games, right? Some of the older games have been retrofitted with rollback, right? So you can even go back and play them, right? You can go back and play fucking, Exerd and Plus R and you can go back and play Sam Show, right? And be on rollback, right? Like you have more choices than ever. And I think it's important to recognize that like just because we have a lot of different choices does not mean you have to make a choice, right? And I think that fighting game culture, unfortunately, pushes people to making a choice. What do I mean by that? I think a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the conversation around fighting games kind of pushes people in a direction of you need to choose what game to play, and whatever game you choose is like, that's you, right? That's you. You're a Street Fighter player. You're a Tekken player. You're right. And that contributes to the tribalism. That contributes to communities infighting with each other, and people like kind of punching down. because I've seen a lot of that with a lot of different games before. One game that I'm pretty heavily involved with, that I've seen that a lot with, was DNF Duel, right? You guys have probably heard of that game. That game got punched down on a lot, like a shit ton. For one reason or another. It's okay for you to not enjoy a game, but a lot of the things that were said about that game, and especially its community, was like, it's completely uncalled for, right? Completely uncalled for. It's so unnecessary. People did not need to do that. And the reason that they do it is because social media is very negative. The more negative things get more traction. And so it's very easy for you to make a post that says, oh, ha, funny 6XL Brave counter game, 800 likes, 100 retweets, right? And you'll see that a lot. And so let me show you an example of that. This is a quote on this Giuna tweet, right? And shout outs to my mans, right? I just want to make it known that I love Killvens. Killvens is my fucking man, right? But this is one of the posts that got the most traction, right? 44 bookmarks, 375 likes, like 20,000 views, right? Most fighting game posts do not get this, by the way. I would like to just point out, right? Much less Grand Blue Rising clips. But yeah, so he quotes it. He quotes the post that's asking, why isn't this game more popular? And what are we going to see here? Right? We're going to see him post a clip of Diaphone getting frustrated at Nier. Right? And so, I don't want to harp on this too much because I like Killvens, and I get that this was likely just done for comedy. But you got to understand, like, a lot of the conversation and the perception of people, especially that don't play the game, gets perpetuated through things like this, right? A lot of why this game is smaller right now is because for this game on release, people just attributed to, oh, it's just 6XL Brave Counter Nier Simulator, and so it's never going to be worth looking at ever, even if it was in jest, right? Even if they weren't being serious, people take it seriously. Like, they straight up do take it seriously. Whether you want them to or not, you can't control how seriously people take things. Whew. Holy shit. This is a dangerous place to be. Twitter time. I never know what Twitter timeline is going to show, bro. I didn't even mean to do that. But do you see the problem here, right? Because people have chosen to shit on the game, whether it's sarcastically or serious or not serious. Like, if I am someone who is not involved in the game and not in the community, and every time I see someone talk about the game, they're talking about how they absolutely despise this thing. Oh my God, this game is unplayable because of this thing. I can't believe that they released this or that, right? And for a game that's pretty new, like, it's not even a year old, right? It's still in dev cycle. The game's still being changed. It's still having things added to it. It's having things adjusted as time goes on. But even though most of the time, you just saw people like that were just being negative for the sake of being negative. To my point, again, I have more examples, right? Zippy made this post. This is a great tweet. At launch, it became trend to bash the game for social media dopamine instead of giving feedback. So it's not that surprising. He's absolutely right? A lot of the conversation with this game up until this point has not been constructive, right? And this, again, is not even just a rising problem. This is actually a modern fighting game issue on social media, but it affects this game in a huge way, right? A massive, massive, massive way. If people were more willing to have actual conversations about the game and how can we push things in the right direction, how can we find counterplay? There's some things that are going to be naturally strong in a game, but as time goes on, we find out more options against things. We find out ways around certain things, right? And so, like, everyone is so hyperbolic. They believe that every single thing that is strong in a game makes it unplayable. They think if a character's strong, unplayable. If a mechanic is strong, unplayable. Nobody wants to, like, take the time to figure out what they can do against it. They just want to cry on social media because, unfortunately, in modern era, it matters. Like, people crying on social media is actually taken seriously by devs, right? And so a lot of people have found it more effective to cry and bitch on social media instead of, like, actually playing the game and figuring out what you can do against certain things. And this has been an ongoing trend, right? And so this is what I mean by, like, part of the culture has to change, right? we have to change the way that people approach conversation, right? We have to change the way that we talk about the game, the way that we talk to each other, right? I can't tell you how many fucking times that I've seen people try to have like a conversation in the game starts, and then someone is like, oh, well, you play this character, so your opinion doesn't matter. It's like, what the fuck? What sense does that make? That doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Just because you pick something in particular does not discount your opinion on the game. That does not make any sense at all. They're just as much a community member as you are. There's like so much entitlement, and there's so much like so many people being condescending, right? For no fucking reason. And most of it comes from their own insecurities, right? They absolutely can't stand that they got fucking smoked by first version Nier. And they can't get past that. They can't get past that, and so they're just angry and they're upset. It's so insane. It's so bothersome, but it matters, right? In the smaller fighting game you are, the more that this matters, the conversation and all of that, because this is what I told people before, and this will always hold true, right? What happens to your fighting game in the long term is always community driven, always, right? For the first few years of a game, depending on how big the game is, a game can be completely carried by the fact that they're still in dev cycle, right? They still have new content being released. They still have, patches being released for the game and this and that. But what happens when all that stops, right? What happens when dev cycle's over? There is no new content. The game has reached its final version. What carries community, right? Community is the one that carry it, right? They're the people that are going to play years and years and years afterwards. And this happens, right? Always bring it up. Melee, right? That game has not gotten patched in forever. it gained rollback because someone was super fucking dedicated, but like that game has not changed in a long ass time. Huge fucking community, even years later. It's actually worse for them because Nintendo actively tries to shut them down. Like, it's right. It's worse than no dev. They have a detrimental dev, right? They still are going strong to this day. Marvel 3, right? Years later, they got their resurgence because people in the community wanted it to survive and they wanted it to thrive. And so Tong, the TNS crew, and everyone in the Marvel 3 community, they banded together and they made shit work. And they're still going strong to this day, right? If you watch ECT, tournament was super high level, right? Still great Marvel being played years later, right? That can be any game. That can be this game too, but we don't even need to get to that point yet, right? Because this game is still new. This game is still new. We're always going to have new content until a certain point. And we're always going to have new things coming to the game, which automatically generates like some amount of new interest, right? But it's a matter of what do we do with that? What do we do with it, right? If we squander it and we don't make anything of it, it's just as bad as us not having it in the first place, right? We need to actively be thinking about how do we leverage these things, right? How do we create a more inviting and positive environment centered around the game? Because right now it's a cloud of negativity. It's a cloud of negativity, and I hate to see it be this way because I've seen how sick it can be. Like I've seen how amazing people in this community can be, and I've talked with a lot of people and I've organized events and I've done this and that. Like I did the 10v10, and after the 10v10 I was completely blown away, right? The 10v10 happened, and after the 10v10 people were like, yo, I want to play exhibitions. And so we just did that. We were like, okay, 10v10's over. Let's hop in a Discord call and run exhibitions, right? And it was like 15 NA top players just in Discord fucking around, playing exhibitions, talking shit, having a good time. Vibes are immaculate, right? And so I know for a fact that things can be better, right? But it's gonna take a group effort, right? We all have to do our part in things like this, right? I never would have gotten that in Dragon Ball. I just want to point that out. Like I did much more for Dragon Ball, right? That would never happen. And it never did happen. I ran 13 10v10s for Dragon Ball. Nothing like that ever happened. Ever. Never happened. So I know that alone, like something's different here. And something that different thing is valuable, right? That's why I continue to harp on these things. And that's why I think things can be better, right? So more to that point. The conversation around mechanics is bullshit. People will try to tell you, right? Let me show you some quote retweets. Let me show you some quote retweets. Like that, like even the first one. He asked why it's not more popular and never said it has good gameplay, right? What else we got? I'm gonna scroll until I see a comment about 6XL or some shit. I'm sure it won't take me that long. It's like we got something here. GBVSR has no good narrative at all. The game meta are so lame. Underwhelming top tier, homogenized cast, right? Like we see all this negativity, right? But that's bullshit, right? At least in the way that they're thinking about it, right? What do I mean by that? Every single fucking fighting game, right? Every fucking fighting game has something that is just like, wow, this is fucked up, right? Every single one. You can't name one. You can't name one that doesn't. In modern fighting games, you can't. You can't. You name a game, I could be like, yeah, no, it has this thing, right? And there are things that people complain about. So it's not like, wow, this is the breaking point. Oh my God, 6XL is so fucking strong. I can't exist in this game at all. And if you think that way, you're a scrub. I'm sorry. I don't want to be harsh here, but like, this is not the make or break, right? Because for every person that doesn't like something, right, there will also be people that do like it, right? There's no mechanic in any game that everyone universally hates or likes. It just doesn't exist, right? That doesn't exist in any fighting game ever. It just won't. And I would argue that like this stuff is like less polarized. It's less polarized than even some others. But when you make it a focus, like when people continually make it a focus, people start to believe that, you know what, now that you think about it, yeah, no, that game is pretty dog shit, right? Even if they don't actually believe it, they can be convinced. They can be convinced that like, yeah, no, like I don't know how anyone plays the game with, I don't know how anyone plays the game with 6XL, bro. Then he logs on Street Fighter and then gets drive rushed at. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so it's not the game itself in the gameplay is not the problem here, right? It might not be for you. I'm not arguing that this game is for everyone, right? There are some people that won't prefer it. Of course. That'll always be the case. But acting like the game is so fucking bad that I don't know how anyone plays it, it's so disingenuous, bro. It's so disingenuous. But when you take that and you make it a focal point of conversation for months, especially close to release, like your launch is so important, right? The launch is when you're going to have the most people playing, and then you can focus on retaining those people and keeping them on the train, right? Keeping them as a part of the community and, you know, leveraging those things, right? If most of the rhetoric and most of the conversation and most of the narrative with the game is, wow, this mechanic is unplay, like you can't play the game because this exists. It's like people are going to start believing that even if they didn't before, right? And you might be thinking like, wow, that's really sheep-minded of them. Yeah, bro. Yes. There are a lot of people that are sheep. Yes. And we're not even just talking about casuals. I know some of you that are not pure casuals can be convinced by your favorite top player, right? Can't tell you how many times I've seen people switch up because their favorite content creator, their favorite player is like, oh, this just must be true. This must be true. And they just start believing it. And like a lot of the time, it's not even like adding that as a perspective, right? When someone says something, you should add it as like, yeah, you know what? Let's take a look at why they think that, right? That's a new perspective that I didn't have before. What you should not do is take whatever someone says and fucking copy paste it into all your conversations going forward. That's what happens in this game. That's like damn near every single 6XL Brave counter conversation in this game. It's literally just a copy paste of what someone else said, right? We're not talking about like, oh, there's this counterplay, but this doesn't feel that great. I wish it was more like this and this and that. Like maybe it should counter this. It should be strong in this way. It should be weak in another, right? We can have conversations about that and it can be constructive, right? And we've done that on this channel, but most people are not having that conversation. They're not doing it that way. It's literally just, this game is ass because I don't like this. Move on, right? Person that's never played the game before sees that. Oh, wow, this mechanic is really bad and makes people feel really bad. I don't think I want to give that a try. You have to be really some type of fucked up to convince someone to not play a free game because you can't get past your insecurities. That's really insane. That's like, that is really insane to me. I will never be able to get past that, right? It is absolutely crazy to me that the game's conversation temperate, like its climate is so bad that we've somehow convinced people to not try a free video game. That's so crazy, right? That is why we need self-reflection here, right? You might not be a sole contributor to the problem, right? Maybe you aren't someone that's doing the things that I'm talking about, right? But I bet you know someone that does, right? And it is up to you if you want this community to survive and you want it to thrive and you want it to grow, because there's a lot of growing that can be done, right? You have to check these things, right? We have to promote thoughtful conversation about the game, push it in a certain direction. That's literally what my entire channel is about, right? That's why I'm having this talk with you guys right now. It's because I want to push things in a positive direction, right? You might feel like you don't have that much of an impact, but you do. You do. If you have a friend that bitches about this character or that matchup or this mechanic every single time that they have to fight it, why don't you start talking to them about it? Let's talk about what we can and can't do. Yesterday, I had someone come in, he's a fairy player, and we were watching ECT, and Zane was playing, right? And so Zane plays Grimnir. And this fairy player in chat was like, you know, I have nothing I can do about this particular situation. They were talking about round start, backdash, tornado into seals, right? They felt like the matchup was impossible for them because they were not able to stop Grimnir setting up seals, right? They're like, I have nothing I can do about this. We literally had a 5-minute conversation. It didn't take that long. It was a 5-minute conversation where we were just bouncing ideas off of each other, right? Just talking about, okay, this might feel like it's impossible, but I really don't think it is. We could figure something out here. 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, wait, we have this, and this option, right? Not everyone is great labbers, right? And I'm not even like trying to shit on this person, but sometimes all people need is a different perspective, right? That's all it takes to turn their mentality around. That's really all, especially if it's from a friend, right? It's harder to get it from a stranger that you don't know because people are probably pretty resistant to listening to takes from strangers in the first place. But like, if you have someone close to you that plays the game, a practice partner, someone that's in the same Discord as you, like someone that inhabits the same communities as you, right? It's much easier to convince them like, hey, there's like, we could have more positive conversations about the game like this. We could figure something out. And like in modern fighters, there are not things that are, most of the time, there's not things that are so strong that they're impossible to fight. That doesn't exist. Not anymore, right? Like games are much more balanced and much less polarizing than they used to be, right? If you go back 20 years, you probably find a fighting game where there's a 10-0 matchup where like it's literally impossible to win or lose because games were just designed like dog shit back then. But you know, you had to start somewhere. Fast forward, like things are not that bad nowadays. They're just not. They're not designed that way. They're not designed that way. In fact, I would argue they're designed in the opposite way. They're designed in a way that even in a bad matchup, a lot of the time mechanics are strong enough that you can mitigate some of it. It might still be a bad matchup, yes, but like there's still wiggle room. There's still wiggle room. There always is, right? And so if we push people more towards that type of positive reinforcement, I think we could get really far, right? But I'm just a guy, right? I'm just one person trying to make a difference, right? This is not going to work with just me. You all in chat have to do it as well. You have to. If you want us to get anywhere, that is. If you don't want us to get anywhere, then you know, you know what it is. We're not speaking up enough, right? None of us are doing enough. None of us. Even the people that are doing the most right now are not doing enough. That might seem harsh, right? That might seem harsh, but like if the goal is growth, if the goal is retention, if the goal is, you know, to bring more people and more attention and more positive things to the game, right? We have to rid ourselves of the idea that enough is enough, right? Sometimes we're going to have to go above and beyond. It's going to take going above and beyond to erase some of that negativity that is associated with the game, right? But we have plenty of opportunities. The game's not even a year old. We have a new patch coming out this month. We have a new character coming out. I think her name's Vakala, right? Like the rat girl, right? We could start. You can get started. You can get started today, right? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get us started today, right? Another thing, man, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but people in Grand Blue, at least in my perspective, they don't like reach out of their comfort zone. Like they don't support things that are not immediately in their bubble. What do I mean by that, right? This is actually this is probably like something that's an issue with greater fighting games as well, but I've noticed it a lot in this particular game, where, like, you know, a lot of my viewers are NA, right? A lot of you guys are probably from North America. There's probably some of you that are from Europe and stuff as well, but like overwhelming majority of you are from North America. That's to be expected, right? But you have no idea what's going on in other scenes, right? You have no idea what's going on across the pond, right? What's going on in Europe? What's going on in Japan? What's going on? Even at most people, it's like not even that. It's like some people don't even know what's going on across the same country as them. They don't think like there are plenty of East Coast players that cannot tell you what the fuck is going on West Coast and vice versa. There are plenty of people, right? And like, to me, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. There's so much more out there. So like one of the things that I do every Monday is I support Hard Edge Weekly, right? How many of you know what Hard Edge Weekly is? Probably not that many people that aren't here in this stream week in and week out. Hard Edge Weekly is an exhibition series where they play 10 first to fives per week, right? They do like open signups and they match people up based on like certain skill brackets. And they just play an exhibition series every Monday. They play 10 first to fives. And that's so dope, right? That's so cool because there's so many like different characters that you get to see, and you get to see how other regions play. These games change severely from region to region. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but the way that people approach games is fundamentally different in different countries, right? Different regions value different things to different levels, and it's just really interesting to see that, right? But I feel like a lot of people are not interested in taking that step and supporting our friends over in Europe, even though they're speaking English, right? If they weren't speaking your language, then I would understand, like, okay, you want to at least be able to understand what's going on. Even though, like, you could definitely watch a fighting game set without understanding commentary. I understand that it adds to the experience, right? They speak English over there. They commentate in English. So is there really an excuse that we're not supporting them every single week? In my eyes, no. Especially us, right? Like, it's much harder for them, I think it's much harder for them to support us because of time zones, right? Our tournaments start at like most of our events start late at night, like 7 Eastern, 8 Eastern, right? Over there, that's like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. It's much easier to see why they may not be able to tune in live, right? But they can still go out of their way to support through like VODs and whatnot, of course. But us, right? Hard Edge Weekly's at 1 p.m. Eastern every Monday. I think it changes a little bit with the way daylight savings time works, but yeah, right. So I watch every week. I watch every single week because there's no reason not to, right? And I think we should also support that, right? Like, there are so many people that are actually working really hard in this community that don't get the spotlight, right? And they should. They should. You guys should be hearing about Hard Edge. You should be hearing about Cake Katakoi. You should be hearing about Che Benji. And like, some of you probably have never heard those names before. You probably never heard those names before today, but those are very, very impactful people in the European scene, right? Go out and support them too. Japan kind of suffers from the issue before, while I was talking about like people don't make content for the game. Like not a lot of people in Japan, I think, are doing very much with the game. Every once in a while, they like do a special event and this and that, but I feel like they're not doing a ton at the moment. And like, I'm working on that, right? I'm like trying to see if there's a way that we could fix that, right? It doesn't take much for me to send a DM to someone and be like, yo, can we like, can we get something going here? Because it matters. It fucking matters, bro. All it takes is one person to like start a trend, right? That's all it takes. Someone to prove that it's possible. And then a lot of the time, other people will follow suit. EU versus NA playing the Korean and Japanese players was probably your favorite part of DNF. Exactly, right? There's that interregional mingling, right? That pushes a lot of things, right? Like now, fast forward, like DNF Duel is still alive and kicking, by the way, right? We run a tournament that involves EU and NA every week, right? They're still around, even despite all the challenges that they had, right? They had a lot of challenges. A lot of challenges. They had to deal with the negativity, just like this game did, but it was way worse for them. And their publisher sucked on top of that. Nexon fucking sucks. Nexon is like one of the worst publishers you could possibly have for a fighting game. They're like next to Bandai. They're like next to Bandai, bro. And so like, that's why, like, I've been a part of these other communities, and in my mind, I'm like, there's no reason that things shouldn't be better, right? And so, like, Giuna making this post, it's really good for him to make this post. This has got a lot of traction, bro. 400k views, right? Absolutely massive for a fighting game related post. A lot of people see this, right? And I'm sure a lot of people reevaluated. They're like, you know what? Why am I not playing this game, right? And it's so long as we're communicative with each other and we're talking about, you know, maybe things don't line up for you, right? Maybe you're playing too many games. Maybe you tried it and, you know, it just wasn't aligning with how you play fighting games for one reason or another, right? Those are all totally valid reasons, right? Anyone could choose to play a game or not to play a game for any reason. But the way that you express that matters, right? Someone saying, you know, I tried it and I just don't think it's my style of game. That's fine. No one's gonna fault you for that. You being like, you know, I tried it and all near players that I ever played are actually the scum of the earth, and they have 0 IQ, and I can't believe anyone would pick up this game because they're all brain dead. And you see how like these narratives are quite different. You see how there's a difference in impact here, right? If we're gonna bring people together, this has to change. It has to change. What's up, Dur? How's it going? But like I said, we're not past the point where like we can do something about it. Like there's still a lot, right? There's a lot that we can do, a lot that we should be doing, right? If you guys have anything in chat that you would like to bring up and we could talk more in depth on those topics, I'm more than willing to. But that's like the overarching sentiment of this, right? Like I've been going on about an hour at this point, an hour and 20 minutes, right? I think that there's a lot to be done. And like, I personally, I'm doing damn near everything I can, right? I'm doing my part. I need you all to do your part too. I need that, right? I need that. And I need it soon, right? I need it soon, because if you wait too long, then things just get ugly, right? What do you think is going to happen next year at Evo? What do you guys think is going to happen? Go to your locals and you see why you should support the community? Yeah, no, absolutely. If you have a local, not everyone does though. That's the problem, right? And so like, yeah, if you have locals, absolutely go to them. Absolutely. But there's a lot of people out there that don't, right? And we have to make sure we're creating an inviting environment for those people too. A community that exists solely online is just as much a community as one that has locals, right? But unfortunately, the communities that exist solely online, it's much easier for things to get into this like echo chamber of negativity. Much easier, right? A lot of this doesn't exist at offlines, right? When you go to offlines, like let's say you go to a major for this game, right? And I know this firsthand. No one is sitting down and having conversations. No one's like bitching at each other nonstop about this or that. Like that's not what happens. That's not what happens. They're sitting down, they're playing the game, they're laughing, they're having fun, they're enjoying themselves, they're enjoying the people around them, right? That's what happens. This shit is not. It's not like that. It's not like that offline. Yeah, like sometimes we'll have a laugh about how silly a fucking situation was or like how crazy a move is, but like it doesn't turn into entire threads about how I can't believe that this game released in this state. Like it's like it's just not like that. It's just not like that. It's frustrating though. It's really frustrating. Some people don't want to learn or complain. Well, a lot of people don't want to learn, right? But like that doesn't mean that we should stop trying, right? You read a guide and something said a move was plus 33 and shit, and then you labbed it out and it was just wrong. I mean, yeah, that happens too. Sometimes there's like actual misinformation. There's a lot of like, you'd be surprised like how many things, how much damage has been done to a lot of different games in like a lot of different fighting games based on like perceptions that were founded on things that were straight up incorrect. that were straight up incorrect. You know, I've this is a really hyperbolic example, but like, you know, I've seen people say that 6XL was plus 20. I looked at it and I was like, how do you even get there? Like, it's like, I was like, how did you arrive at this? Right? If you were the one that came up with this, then I need to know how you got there. Otherwise, that means you heard that from someone else. And so I gotta wonder where they got it from. I don't know. It happens. It happens though. Like it really does. And most of it is people just not willing to like do their homework. If you block 6XL six times pre-patch, it's plus 20. Okay, well the advantage on 6XL has not changed, but but either way, like this is my TED Talk, guys. This is my TED Talk. I don't want things to continue as they are. And I'm not even saying I'm like the anti-doomer, right? This is like the ultimate anti-dooming talk, right? I'm not saying that from a place of like, oh, things are so horrible, bro. Like, oh my God, we're gonna die tomorrow if something isn't done. That's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is that I think that this game like has every right and absolutely can be like maintaining its position in terms of like size and its presence and everything like that. Like, and I want it to. In my eyes, there's no reason it shouldn't, as long as the people in the community that inhabit it are like on for the ride, right? But that's what it's gonna take. That's what it's gonna take, straight up. People make me lose my fucking mind, man. But yeah, like how do we get there, right? Like I'm working on it. I'm working on it, man. But I need help. I need help. I can't do it alone. And so actually I want to give a quick shout out I have like a list of people. I like have a list of people that I want to shout out. But before I do that, actually, let me bring up another point real quick. Wow, it just never ends. I actually have endless things to talk about. Okay, another thing, right? Let's talk about storylines, right? One of the things that drives fighting games the most is its storylines, right? That actually the most important thing to a fighting game, to viewership, to player base, to all of that, right? It's storylines, right? Creating a narrative or like following a narrative. Like if you're someone that's new to fighting games, right? Having a story that you can latch onto and get invested in goes a really long way, right? A really, really long way. You want to know why Daigo is the most popular FGC entity? It's because Moment 37, right? Why is Moment 37 so interesting? Because of the narrative and the storyline leading up to it, and then also the execution in that moment on the grandest stage, right? Between two legends in fighting game history, right? Every fighting game has storylines, but some are stronger than others, right? And as it stands, right, the way that this game has been talked about, right, we're making our storylines more about player versus game rather than player versus player, right? That's really important, right? If the overarching sentiment is you're fighting against Granblue versus Rising, right? That's not that interesting. No one's really that interested in fighting against the game itself, right? But they will be able to invest in, oh, these two players, you know, they have this history and this and that. There was this going on, but it has to be organic. You can't force this, right? And this is where some games fuck up. Some people try to force it. You see people acting super, super cringy, like villains. They're like trying to be F-Champ over again. The reason why F-Champ was such an interesting entity as a villain, right, is because that was actually just how he was. That was not fabricated, right? He was actually just like that. And he backed it up with his play, right? Winning Evo and winning a bunch of other events and this and that, right? That's why that storyline was interesting. It's not because he decided to play a character, right? It's just not. So it can't be fabricated. But one of the more interesting things that's happened recently that I saw was this. Who is a Charlotta player, one of Charlotta's soldiers, was talking about, so when's the Vanilla Boomers versus Rising Zoomers team battle? This actually got way more traction than I thought it was, than I thought it would. I was like, wow, I'm actually surprised by how many people are latching onto this, but people took it and ran with it, right? If you look at the quotes here, like we have Yozamitsu chiming in, and eventually we got to a point where like people were quoting each other a bunch of times. Yozamitsu saying, I don't even like using them words, but I'm baking the shit out of them old heads. I'm like, all right, this is, you think you're an anime character, but you know what? I'm okay with the energy, right? And then we go further. It's a really good picture to use. This is a really good picture to use. But like, do you see what I'm talking about? Like, you can follow this and be like, yo, like, this is actually something I'd like to see. Tega's like, oh, is that so? Right? And so if we go further, we eventually get to the place, and this is where I'm gonna get to my shoutouts. I think that's where the quotes end, right? So it says that's so, right? And we actually get something out of this. We have G-Tech, shout out to G-Tech. That's gonna be my first shout out of this segment, right? Who said, you know, he'll step up. I'm more than happy to run this, right? And this is what we need, right? This is like something organic that was not forced, that also creates a storyline, right? Now we have the storyline of, you know, the Zoomers versus the Boomers, right? We could turn this into a thing, right? And they're gonna turn this into a thing. I think they're trying to do this after ECT, I wanna say. I have it bookmarked somewhere. Where is it? Here it is. Should be this one. Yeah, give me a week or two after ECT and we can get it situated. But I'm down to run production for it, right? Like, this is a big deal, right? Because this is gonna be something that creates some form of rivalries, right, for people as well, right? Now people are more gung-ho about the game because they don't want to get outdone by the Zoomers or the Boomers. Like we're not trying to say these people are better than us. We're better, so we're gonna prove it, and this and that, and this can go on, right? It's not the only thing that should be driving storylines here, but like you could see like why this would be interesting to not only just Granblue players, but like people that see this from the outside looking in. Like this is something speaking on like fighting game culture. Like every game has this to some extent, where it's like the old guard versus the new heads, right? It's like almost always interesting. Like almost always, right? It's one of the most tried and true like sources of narrative, right? If you think about what happened this past week at ECT, one of the biggest upsets was young Matt Teen, who's like, he's like really young. He's in his teens, right? And he upset Angry Bird. It was like, Evo champion, bro. Like, is it? we know what Angry Bird has done, right? And we know what he's been there for, and like that is like, that's like an idea that like keeps fighting games going, right? The idea that no matter how new you are to the game, no matter where you are in your walk of life, you can compete, right? And you're competing on the same level as your peers, no matter who those peers may be. There are people that are 40 plus winning majors. Idazan is 43. Idazan is 43. He won ECT yesterday. 600 plus man Street Fighter tournament. On Zangief. He's the on Zangief, right? And that's like the beautiful thing about fighting games. Or one of the very many beautiful things about fighting games is that dynamic does exist, where it really doesn't matter where you're from, what age you are, this or that. All that matters is how good are you, right? How much do you want it? And so like when they get this going, I don't know about you guys, but I'm here for this. I'm gonna make damn sure I don't miss this. I'm making damn sure I don't miss this. I have to see this, right? And I have to see the fallout of it. Like, is there gonna be more shit talking afterwards? There was actually a really funny back and forth between Yoza and Gandito. That's actually how I found out about this. I didn't even know that they were trying to do a crew battle. I didn't see this conversation until this part where Yoza and Gandito were having their back and forth, where they were gonna money match for like $500. And then Gandito realized that Yoza was talking about playing Rising instead of Vanilla. Like this shit is just funny, right? It's funny, and it's something that people can get invested in, right? These exist, right? They exist today in Granblue Rising. Like, you might be thinking like these things are just not there, right? That's not true. That's not true. They exist. We're just not giving enough attention to them, right? We're not doing enough to make sure that things like this are highlighted, right? Give people, as long as you give people a place to play and give people a place to watch, they will show up. They will show up. The 10v10 I ran, right? First time ever doing it for Granblue, right? Some of the, this is not supposed to be like a bragging segment, right? But like, it's some of the highest viewership this game has seen in recent times, right? If we're not talking about like big majors and whatnot. This was not a tournament that I ran, right? This was just a fun thing. There was no money on the line for 10v10 at all. There just wasn't. There was no money whatsoever, right? And even still, people were still invested, right? They were still having fun watching, and they were in chat being active and cheering on their favorite players and talking about this or that. That's more of the things that we need to perpetuate, right? Those are the things we need to highlight and prop up more and more. And it's not just me. There's plenty of people aside from us doing things. It's just that we're just like really public facing. So it's easy to latch on to us, but it's very important to appreciate all levels of people putting in work for the game. Like, even people think it's a competition. It's really not. It's not a competition. Stop thinking that because fighting games are competitive, that means every aspect of them is competitive. When we talk about events and community and all that, it's not competitive, right? We're in this shit together. The sooner you realize that, the bigger we will be, the more successful we will be, right? I give shout outs to the same tournament that's scheduled on top of me, right? Because I get it. There's not enough hours in a week. Yes, enter both. I don't stop people from double bracketing, right? I just don't. If you want to play in multiple tournaments, absolutely. Everyone deserves to be a part of this, right? Everyone deserves to be a part of this community and have as much fun as they possibly can. We should not be hindering that behavior in the slightest. So please, no matter how big or small someone is doing something for this game, just show your appreciation. Just being there is usually enough, right? We talk about like, you know, you're a lurker, you're not active in chat or this or that. Like, just just like showing appreciation, just showing up is the first step, right? Just show up first. If you want to go above and beyond, then great. That's cool. That's cool. We love that too. But like, you got to show up. You got to show up. When someone decides to have a new inventive idea for the game at a focal point, you got to show the support, right? Because people will burn out if you don't. You know what it's like to put in hours and hours and hours of time and effort into something and it to not be received the way that you wish it was, right? That's what makes people burn out. And then if they quit doing things with the game, then what happens, right? It's hard to keep growing if that's the case, right? It takes a long time to quote unquote replace people, right? Some people, like a lot of people, are not replaceable. They're not replaceable. If TNS decided to just stop running Granblue, that would be a pretty significant blow to the scene, right? Think about that. It would be a really big deal if TNS just like, yeah, we're done. If Impurist, right? That's another shout out, right? TNS, another shout out I was talking about, right? Impurist Club runs WASD. You all know about WASD, right? If Impurist was like, yeah, I'm just done, right? That'd be a pretty fucking big deal. You know, that'd be a pretty fucking big deal if he just decided to do that. And I don't want that for anyone, right? I think what we have right now, our infrastructure is there. We have a pretty solid infrastructure on the like competition end. The content end needs some work. The content end needs some work. The competition part is definitely there, right? And so like, just do what you can to support where you can. And I think we'll be okay. But like, I think people need to talk about this. They need to talk about this. I've had conversations like this with like Tega and whatnot. Like Tega is like someone that I think is like pretty, like, I think he understands. Like, I think he gets it. But even he, like, I told him, I was like, hey, like, you could be doing more too, right? We all can. We all can. Tega could make some fantastic content in this game if he put in the effort. He could. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think he could be one of the biggest creators, right? But how many people at that level are actually taking the time to do so? It's not that many, unfortunately. I need to try to convince them to do so. That's my next project. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but shit, man. It feels super bad. It feels super bad. But yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.